September is Cancer Awareness Month, and I always support this in many different ways, one of which is supporting the Light the Night Walk for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. It's a great charity, and I will match up to $500, 10% of all donations that are made. If you're looking for a free way to be able to support cancer awareness, use these colors for your shoelaces. It's an interesting way. Hey, before we get started, I just wanted to point out that I've organized all my videos into playlists on my channel. So if you're looking for more videos around a specific topic, especially topics like this with general shoe knowledge, you can find all of the videos in one place so that you're able to easily access everything that's out there. Thanks much. So today I want to talk a little bit about shoe care. And I think that it's important to look at shoe care in a lot of different ways. There are some types of shoes that require special care. There are other types of shoes that require virtually no care. The level of shoe care that you provide your shoes can make a significant difference in how long they last. It can also make a tremendous difference in how they look. Shoes can last for a long time. This is a pair of shoes from the 1980s. It still has very good sole wear, very good heel wear. The shoe itself looks great, and that's because it's well taken care of. It has some shoe trees in it. Shoe trees are very important just to keep the shape of the shoe together, and the way you store the shoes is important as well. But mostly, I'm going to talk about leather care today. And how to care for different leathers. And what I wanted to do was really talk about different types of care and talk about some of the options that are available and some of the accessories that are available to care for your shoes, just because I think that this is something that gets confusing. I'm not selling anything. I have no agenda. I'm not trying to tell you that one product is better than another. In some cases, I'll provide different theories. And in other cases, I'll tell you some of the things that I use or that I've kept using for years and years and years. So let's start off with suede. And this is a pair of suede derbies. And the color is dark brown. And suede gets a bad rap because a lot of people think that it's very fragile. And that's not been my experience at all. It is leather. And while you do, create the leather differently than like a full grain leather, it is a very, very sturdy material. I've not had problems with suede getting ruined in the rain, and I don't do a massive amount of care for suede either. So now the first thing you need to have is a suede brush. There are a couple different kinds. This is a crepe brush. All you have to do with it is just rub it along the shoe. This will get rid of most stains. It'll also help you manage the shoe. If you get something caked onto a suede shoe, that's when you get into these funky things. Now, you've probably seen one of these. This is your typical suede brush that comes free with an inexpensive pair of suede shoes. You might buy it for $6-7. It has a little bit of a bristle here. That's a firm bristle for getting out dirt. It has these soft bristles here, and then it has these little things here that can kind of go into the welt and scrape the sole, etc. These are handy. I got this one free with a pair of shoes from Herring. I think I bought a pair of Churches from Herring, and it came with this brush, which is really nice. I also got a pair of Carminas that came, actually this pair of Carminas, I think, came with this suede brush. This has a really nice bristle brush, nylon bristle on the outside and steel or brass on the inside. So really another type of thing. And again, You can use this to work on making sure that the nap of the suede is pretty. But you can also use this to get out really, really nasty stuff. When you're trying to really rough up the suede, you can just use a pure wire brush. That works as well. I got this from Justin Fitzpatrick on the Shoe Snob. Also really, really handy. When you need to recolor the suede, there is a Suede Renovateur from Saphir. It is a spray, which is really different. This has pigment in it, just like a shoe polish, so it'll restore the color of the suede. Be very, very careful with this. It does stain. It stained a granite stone table I have on my patio, and has also provided stains on my dining room table, even through newspaper. If you don't put enough layers, be careful. Okay? But it is really good, and if you do stain something and you clean it quickly, it will work. And if you don't do it quickly, I used a product called Goof Off, which did a really good job of taking it off the stone table so you can't really see it anymore. Otherwise, you'll have an outline of shoes on your table and probably lose your wife and family and home, which is not good for anybody. So the other thing that I use is just a regular Suede Spray. This is like a waterproofing spray. I got this bottle from Carmina along with the brush, but I also I bought a bottle of Alan Edmonds Suede Spray. I have a bottle of Uggs Suede Spray. And I have used all of those interchangeably for a long time. I used to think you sprayed the shoes once and they lasted forever. I then learned that the waterproofing actually wears off after about 3-4 months. I'm really bad about this. It's not something that I do regularly, but I do try to refresh the shoes at least once a year, and I've not had any problems. I have walked through puddles. I've gone through New York in suede shoes for a week in the same pair, which I know is stupid, but we all pack differently, and different trips call for different occasions. And my shoes were no worse for the wear after I get home and I brushed them out with this. So that's all good. Now, if you do stain your suede, they make a beautiful suede eraser, which I forgot to bring over here, so I'm not going to talk about it now. But it's basically like a pencil eraser. It's not very complicated. You simply erase over the area and then you brush it like heck afterwards and the stain is gone. So this works really well if you accidentally draw on your shoes with a pen, which, as funny as that sound, has happened to me. So don't fret. You can always get through it. So that's suede. The next thing I'm going to talk about is grain calf. I think everybody knows how to take care of your regular calf shoes, but with grain calf, there's always a lot of questions. And so I brought a bunch of different grain calves to kind of talk about different ones. So the first one is your basic pebble grain. And I will include some pictures of these, preferably outside if I can catch the light. But the grain calves, the hard part about it is that grain calf has this grain on it, and if even really, really high quality grain, you're going to have a hard time getting in there unless you actually use your fingers. And so there's a couple different kinds, right? This is, I would call this like a London grain. It's a fairly big pattern. I'm going to call this like a really pebble grain because it really feels like pebbles on it. This is a pebble grain where it's smoother. Okay, so it's got the same pebble patterns, and they call this a Scotch grain. This is Crockett and Jones. This is a Foster and Sons. The first pair I showed is a Meerman. Okay. Then you have this is my original the vintage shoe that I showed. This is a Florsheim 93602, and this is called a cashmere calf grain. And what's interesting about this is that it feels really smooth, but when you look at it, it has a very, very subtle texture to it, which is also interesting. But it also, I mean, it has enough texture that it's difficult to polish. Then you have different grain calves, right? So this is what they call Utah calf, okay? And that has a really cool hatch pattern in it. Speaking of hatch, then we have hatch grain. Okay. And then last, we have what I'm going to call the tumbled leathers. And I probably the grains would probably fall into the tumbled leathers. But this is a llama calf. Okay, and that's always an oxymoron, right? But this is Carmina actually has this on their MTO program, and it's a llama pattern that's basically pressed into calf skin, so it is calf, and so it has a very, very different kind of pattern. Okay, so now the question that you've got to ask yourself is, how high a shine do you want on the shoes with this kind of imprint on it? And what are you looking for? What's the use case? You've probably noticed all of mine have some shine on them. That's because I'm me and I'm a shoe guy and that's what I like to do, but it's not necessary. So let's talk about what you do need to do in order to take care of the shoes. First, you need a cleaner and a conditioner. I will use Bic 4, and I don't have a bottle handy here, but I'll use Bic 4 as a conditioner for all my shoes. I have a very large rotation, so sometimes I need to condition my shoes between polishing, just because if I polish every 7 times, that means I'm polishing once every year and a half, and that's too long to let the shoes go without some level of conditioning. So I will put some Bic 4 on them and just rub it in, just let it dry, brush it, you're done. But when I'm polishing the shoes, I really like to use a conditioner that has some shine property to it. And I have 2 that I'm going to show today. These are not the only 2 on the market. I have others that I have in my own arsenal, and I have one that I'll talk about a little bit later as it relates to certain leathers, but that is also an acceptable alternative here. The first one is Saphir Renovateur. Saphir Renovateur has got a mink oil. It has a whole bunch of different oils and fats and stuff in it. It's really easy to use. You just put a little bit on your finger, and this is, Kirby Allison and some of the other YouTubers who sell this stuff, like to say less is more. And what I'm going to tell you about that is that if you use a little, it works better than if you use a lot. Okay? So I'm saying the same thing, it's less is more. But I really want you to think about that for a minute, because it works better if you don't use so much. Okay, so now this is Utah calf, and somebody on my channel specifically asked me to cover Utah calf, so I'm going to use this as the example. I have Saphir Renovateur on my finger, and I just rub it in. Now I use my finger to really rub it into the leather, and I push it all the way around. Now that was not a lot of Saphir Renovateur, okay, but it is enough for the whole shoe. I would use that same amount there, just a dab on my finger for the rest of the shoe. Now what I try to do is I try to do the front part of the shoe one time that I do this, and then the back part of the shoe the next time I do it, so that each time it gets a little bit more on there. Now this is important. When you're talking about grain leathers, you have to rub the conditioner in. When you're talking about smooth leather, you just rub your finger over the edge of it and it just goes right through, and you're no worse for wear. For this, you really have to rub it in. And then this is where we get into brushing. Okay? And brushing can be important. So I'm going to talk about a couple different kinds of brushes, I'm going to cover some of them without actually demonstrating them, but they're pretty much self-evident. But I have a pick brush, okay? I made up the name pick brush. I know that it has a bunch of different names, but I call it a pick brush because I think of it like a toothpick. This is a brush that I think is primarily for getting inside of brogue holes, okay? So here I have a brogue hole shoe, right? This is a long wing, and I use this to get inside each hole. Now, I can apply polish, and I can polish in each hole, but I don't like to do that. I like to use this to clean each hole and maybe apply conditioner into each hole. Not usually. Usually it's just like a cleaner. And then I'll keep the brogue holes clean, and then when I apply polish to the outside, I try not to get it into the brogue hole, so I have a contrast. But that's clearly up to you. If you're looking at it and you say, that's a contrast, that's ugly, I don't like that, they're your shoes. So that's totally fine. You can use this in order to put the colored polish in there and make sure that it's evenly distributed. It is tricky to use. It's obviously too big for what it is, and so you've got to be kind of careful. You got to use circular motions, etc., etc., etc. But it works it does work, and that's important. And we've all also had the problem where we put the wrong color polish on the wrong part of the shoe and needed to do a good job of cleaning it out. This works great for that. The next kind is a welt brush, okay? And this one is made by Saphir. This other one is an Allen Edmonds. And this is just something that you use on near the welt in order to get the polish into that area, right? It's smooth, or excuse me, it's thin, okay? And it has stiff bristles, and you can do that. I hate doing this. I always use my finger, but you know what? When you look really carefully at my shoes, you can see the line of polish because I don't get close enough to the welt. That also means I'm not getting close enough to my welt with the Severe Renovateur to actually apply it to the welt. Whoops. So, you know, the welts last longer than the soles, so you need to make sure you give them just a little bit of conditioner, a little bit of love, and you got to make sure that you clean it out really nice. And this will do that. You've heard me talk about how much I love the fudging on my shoes, things like that. This is the perfect cleaner to get in there for all of that. It works really well. You can use it for applying conditioner and cleaner. You can also use it for applying polish, okay? So that's there. Now, many people love using this. This is a Dauber brush. I don't use Dauber brush unless I'm using it for a cleaner or to apply something that needs to be applied very heavily, okay? So what am I talking about? Well, if I'm using, this is another conditioner cleaner that I use. This is Pure Polish conditioner and cleaner. The reason that I love this one, honestly, is that it smells like oranges instead of smelling like gasoline. If I use this one, which is Venetian Shoe Cream, which we'll talk about later, it smells like gasoline, which is not very good. The Saphir Renovateur doesn't really smell at all. It's kind of it doesn't really smell at all. So, but I'll use this one. I don't use this for the cleaner and conditioner because I think it just puts too much on. You don't want to soak your shoes, okay? Now, if the shoes are dirty, and I mean filthy, like covered in dirt, and I actually have an example here. These have dirt all over them, okay? And there's dirt on the outside of the shoe. I would use something called saddle soap. Saddle soap, and this is Allen Edmonds saddle soap. Saphir makes saddle soap. Everybody makes saddle soap. It doesn't really matter. I just don't use kiwi because I know that it has a bunch of silicone in it. But Phoebings or a lot of these other ones are totally fine. You just take this, you make it wet. I use a spray bottle, but some people will just dip the brush into the water, and then you rub it around this, and then you actually soap it onto your shoes to make a lather, okay? I actually, and I forgot that I had this and I didn't bring it down, for my suede shoes, I have a suede shampoo from Uggs. I could have it from anybody else either, but the Uggs one seems to work because lamb suede is not that different from my other suede, right? From calf suede. So it is another possibility that you can use. I use this with this, and I'm able to do it. Now, some things are really delicate when you're talking about conditioning your shoes, and I brought an example. This is dubbin, okay? Dubbin is very oily. This is something that I learned about from Kirby Ellison, his presidential shoe shine, and this is a Buticure version of it. There is also a Saphir Medal d'Or version of it, so get what you want. I got this because I could get it. It's not the easiest thing to find online. But what you use dubbin for is sometimes when your leather gets old, it needs to be heavily conditioned. Kind of like if you find a baseball mitt and it's in your garage and it's been in your garage for a year. I first used it when I found a pair of shoes that I'd forgotten that I had that were sitting in the trunk of my car underneath like the deck. They were dried out. It had probably been 2 years. I keep my cars a long time. So I actually did I cleaned them out with saddle soap. I let them dry. I brushed them. I used Severe Renovateur. I brushed them. They didn't really come back as much as I wanted them to. So I used this, and I let it sit on there, and it took 4 days to dry. Days. I'm not a very patient guy. That didn't really work all that well for me, so I wanted to really emphasize this. Do not heavily apply this. Lightly apply this. It's supposed to take a day or two. So a day or two is fine. I did it later and I got it down to a day or two because I did very, very small finger application, and I basically did it until basically just I could see a little bit of color on the shoe, not very much, and it took 2 days. Okay, so very, very good stuff. If you want your shoes to be butter soft, this is a good way of doing it. And I will stop there. Now, the brushes specifically for the grain shoe, this is a boar hair brush. This happens to be from Abbeyhorn, but many, many people make them. And I got the one with short bristles. Short bristles mean that it's stiffer. Stiffer boar hair is also stiffer. If you use stiff boar hair brush, this can get everything into the grains, okay? In between the grains. So when I'm doing this one where it's a really rough shoe, I can actually get really, really deep into the shoe. When I'm using my my hatch grains, I can actually apply the leather, the colors and all that stuff. I can actually push it around differently. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll have different color on the brogue line than I'll have on the shoe. And I want to make sure that I'm really careful. Well, I can actually control this one so that I do it where it's just on the particular, that I'm not actually blending the colors while I'm brushing it. So something to think about. So the boar hair brush is really, really important when you're dealing with grain leathers. But it's the same process, right? You use the conditioner, you work it into the shoe, you use a very, very stiff brush, and you brush the heck out of your shoes. And what do I mean by the heck out of your shoes? I'm not talking about doing it like this. I mean, you really brush them. Really deep into the crevices so that you're able to get everything going. You should create enough friction with the shoe that it actually creates some level of heat, okay? And then you want to make sure that you go in the other direction too. And then you want to make sure that you're very close to the welt to get that welt clean, okay? And get whatever you applied into the welt area with your fingers or your brush well and truly cleaned, okay? Now, this shoe you can see is shiny here and shiny there. That's because I'm a shoe polish fanatic and I like to make sure that they're actually polished. Now, how do you do that? What do you do in order to be able to do that? Some people are not into this and they don't necessarily know. So after you do the conditioner, then you do what they call like a shoe cream polish. Now, this happens to be a bottle of neutral severe cream 1925. But I can use, I've used the Shoe Snob for a long time. I've used a lot of the different shoe manufacturers like Crockett & Jones or Herring, or a bunch of those different guys have their own. A lot of it's all privately branded, the same stuff. Find something that you like. Try not to use something that's silicone based. Try to use something that's turpentine based because it seems to work better. The really, really good one is the Severe Mid Alta or Pure Polish. And Pure Polish has a water resistant cream and it has a cream polish, okay? Either of those will work really, really well. I've had really, really good luck with the Pure Polish. I'm really happy with the way that it's worked out. But the Saphir works really well too. So anyway, when you've applied your cream polish to the shoe, the cream polish will soak in, you let it dry 10 minutes, just like anything else, and then you can follow it up with a wax polish. Now, I use a lot of neutral waxes, but I also have colored waxes for all the basics. Your mid brown, your light brown, your dark brown. Sometimes you can mix colors with creams and with waxes. I generally tend to go with a darker wax and a lighter cream because the cream has more pigment in it and the wax doesn't. And the wax is also a layer on top. It's transparent, or translucent, I guess, so it'll allow you to create some shading, which is a really good look on the shoe. So, whereas you can use wax now. There are a couple different kinds of wax that I wanted to point out. There's this kind of wax, which is you open this up here, it's kind of like a hard, or it's like a really, really watery almost wax. Now you can have you can have petroleum-based wax, you can have turpentine-based waxes, and then you have ones that are more like candle wax. And Petaware has this one that's more like a candle wax that is not slippery or slimy at all. And that can feel really nice. And then there's also mirror gloss that you can do. Now, I don't usually use mirror gloss on grain leather, but when I have a combination like I do here, where I have the llama and then I have the Vogue calf, I'll use it there. Now, Pure Polish also has the waxes. So it has the cream and the wax, and then it has a high shine paste as well. Those all work really well also. Big difference between Pure Polish and Saphir. Saphir you let dry for 10 minutes and then you work it, and then you do the water wax afterwards. Pure Polish you let dry an hour, and then you buff it out, and then you can do some water waxing with it after that. And the water waxing is the same. You just add a little bit of water and the wax to your fingers, and you can go to town. So not a big difference there. When you have leather soles, there's a couple times when you're going to want to, maybe once a year, you might want to oil the sole in order to have it be more water resistant. Saphir makes this cool product called Sole Guard, but you can also just use vegetable oil. It feels pretty much exactly the same, and vegetable oil is a lot cheaper. So that's another thing you can do. I don't use vegetable oil, I just use that. But again, it feels very, very similar. What you really want to do, and it's not very much, right? You just want to make sure that you get enough in there so that it penetrates and that it creates the feel on the sole of that seal. Okay, so not a huge deal there. Talked about Bic 4 before. Bic 4. This is a lot less expensive than the Saphir or even the Pure Polish. I think this is like $7 for this big bottle. And just to put it in perspective, the Pure Polish I think is 15. The Saphir is like 25. Okay, so it's quite a big difference there. And this is just your everyday conditioner there. Now, you also have different kinds of leather. So we talked about suede. We talked about the grains. We talked about the difference between that most of the grains are all really the same, right? The big difference is whether or not the like the pebble grain sticks out more. Everything else you're trying to get inside the crevices. But either way, you're still using your boar hair brush after. And I didn't say this before, but I recommend having a big horsehair brush like this one, and I use this to clean the shoes before I polish them. So or before I condition them. So that's a good idea. And then I have other versions of this, white and black, depending on the color that I'm using, that I use after I wax and in between cream polish layers. Again, it's important that you let the cream polish dry because it's so heavy in pigment, and then you don't get a lot on the brush. But I do have a different brush for brown. I actually have a different one for red, and then I have a different one for black. And then because I do so many shoes, I'll also have light browns and dark browns. So now, other types of leather. So again, the grain is all pretty much the same as your regular smooth leather, okay, or your regular custom calf or high-end calf shoes. The only difference is the boar hair brush to really make sure that you get in the crevices. But some leathers are different. So first we're going to talk about Chrome XL. Right? This is an Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill. Now this is available in a lot of different leathers, but I bought this in Chrome XL because this is really, really well-known tough leather. And I wear these as hiking boots. I know a lot of people don't see them that way, but I thought that the Chrome XL was a good leather because it ages well. It can look kind of ratty when you buy it from Allen Edmonds. There are some brands where it looks a lot nicer, and I don't know why, right? But you know, there are just wrinkles and so forth that, like here, there's a lot of wrinkles on it here, but they don't look really, really bad. It just creates this this kind of roughness to it. But sometimes there can be some that kind of looks like the poring is just really, really open, and so when they crease and when they wrinkle, it just doesn't look that great. So, but for Chrome XL, I use Venetian shoe cream. and I cannot give you a scientific reason why, okay? But from trial and error, I've tried a lot of different products, and Saphir has a greasy wax one that supposedly works as well. But I really like the way this works with this shoe. And I'll give you an example, okay? The toe on this is really beat up. It's really beat up because when I was hiking around Scotland for a few weeks last summer, I had to use my toe in order to pull the car door on my rental car back in toward me every time I had to close the door. And we were getting in and out 20, 30, 40 times a day because we were driving all over the place and hiking around. So this got beat up, and I wound up using both feet in order to do it, trying to make it better, but both toes got really messed up. So I get home after 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks on the road. This boot was brand new when I left, and it looked terrible. Okay, 2 coats of Venetian shoe cream, and the shoes look really, really good. Okay, so just a thing there. These have day-night soles, so they require no care at all. Now the other one is Nubuck. Okay, and so this is basically an Allen Edmonds Nubuck that has the Christmas colors in it, so they call it a Santa Mock. And it's unlined. This is super, super thick casual leather. It's almost like, if you feel the inside, it's almost like a roughed out waxy suede. This is just really, really, really thick. And for this, you use the Big Four and you use nothing else. Now that's what everybody told me. Personally, I thought that the colors were too bland. Okay, so the green was a little bland and the red was a little bland. So what I did was I took Saphir Forest Green and Saphir Hermes Red, and I put that on here, and I put 1 coat, last Christmas, and it still looks like this. All I've done is brush it and wear it. I probably wore it about, 10 times during December, and then I've only worn it a couple times since. But it's a great spectator, even for the non-holiday season. But for the holidays, these are my go-to boots, and they definitely will be this year because it looks like I'm not going to be on the road in front of clients. So now, although it was a great talking piece when I was in front of clients, so you never know. Now, the next thing is Shell Cordovan. Okay? And Shell Cordovan has, there is a Shell Cordovan cream by Saphir. It looks just like this, just has a different cover. On the inside, it's totally different. It's a really nice piece to it. But I have found that the Pure Polish Water Resistance Cream does a great job in nourishing and keeping Shell Cordovan. And what's great about the Water Resistance Cream is it does not water spot. And the creases that happen, and it's not a crease, it's a roll, okay, because it's Shell Cordovan, but the creases that happen are not as pronounced after a full day of wear. So that is something that's really cool, and I've never had that experience with anything but the Pure Polish. Now, a lot of Horween, who makes Shell Cordovan, recommends Venetian shoe cream, and I've had decent luck with it. I've used the Saphir Cordovan cream. I will use Venetian shoe cream if I get a scuff on my Shell Cordovan, okay? And let me give you an example of how you can get a scuff. I am really, really bad with my feet, okay? So I'm sitting on an airplane, and I've got my feet. I don't know what to do with my feet, and so I push them against the seat in front of me, not against the front, but against the side on the leg on the floor, right? Well, I get off the plane, and I look at my shoes, and my shoes have these huge indentations of that hardware that was on the seat, and it was terrible. It was ugly. It doesn't brush out, and so I really needed to do something different. So what I did was I came home and I used this this Venetian shoe cream, and I rubbed it on a deer bone. Okay, now you can buy a deer bone. Carmina sells deer bones. Kirby Allison sells deer bones. You can also get other bones. I've seen Beto's Leatherworks has done a video where he used a lamb bone, right? And don't let your dog get your deer bone, okay? I did that with my old dog, and so I have to always hold it the same way because I can't use that side anymore. I could sand it down, but I'm too lazy. So what you do is you just, you put the VSC or the Venetian shoe cream on the leather and on the bone, and then you just rub it in circles, okay? And there are oils in the bone that help move around the leather. It kind of loosens it up. And shell cordovan is not really a leather, it's a membrane. And so the properties of it are very different. What I like about it is that you can pretty much get out any scratch or scuff and just make it so that it's, barely noticeable. There are some, bends and some wear to it, but they really, really look good over time. These are only a couple years old, but I have shell shoes that are 20 years old, and I also have a pair that's 50 years old. Okay, I have a vintage pair of Florsheims from the 60s, but it's just really, really a solid material, and with use of a deer bone, with use of Venetian shoe cream, you can get out scuffs, scratches really, really well, and then with the pure polish, you can give it a cleaning and a conditioning, and then you can brush it a little bit, spritz some water on your brush, and you can have the shoe that looks great all day long. So really a different type of thing there. So when you're done caring for your shoes, you moisturize, you condition, you polish, you wax, you get it all done. I would use when I'm done with the wax, when I do wax, especially with a high shine wax, but after I'm done with the wax, I will wax it usually with a dress shirt, okay, and I didn't bring any of those, but so I usually apply that stuff with my fingers, okay, then I will sometimes, when I'm trying to bring out the shine, I'll use like an old t-shirt, and I'll bring out the shine with the t-shirt. After that, I move to a dress shirt, okay, and that will actually, it has less lint, it has less pores in the material, it allows a higher shine. And then after that, I'll rub this. This is a finishing brush over it. Now this is goat hair, okay, which is like cashmere. Super, super soft, and will help finish the shine. What's nice about this is that you can use this after colored waxes and everything like that, and they won't come off on your hand, which really matters if you're wearing white slacks, because you don't get your shoe polish on your pants, right? So you can do that. That helps you create the final finish, and you can go from there. Now, lastly, a shoehorn. Okay, I know that these are a pain in the neck. All of us think that, this is what our dad used, and we're not going to take the time. Have a shoehorn, use a shoehorn. It will make your shoes last several years longer. And if you don't need a shoehorn to put on your shoes, they might be too big, okay? That's a lesson that I've learned the hard way. So think about it, use it. Sometimes a shoehorn this big, this is one of the big brass shoehorns that Beato's Leatherworks actually covered in leather, which is beautiful. But sometimes you need a smaller one, so the ones that come with your shoes, like Alden still comes with shoehorns, Barker does, a number of brands do. Use those shoehorns, and that will make it easier. I had a pair of Edward Green slip-ons and a pair of Alton Bautiers slip-ons that I could not get on my feet without a shoehorn, and 2 times wearing them with a shoehorn, the shoes fit fine, and they were able to go on and off my feet a lot easier, because I basically trained the shoe to use the shoehorn. So something to consider, not a small thing. And we talked a little bit at the beginning of the video about a suede eraser, and I actually pulled it out just so that I could show it to you. And I really wanted to point this out because I think that people think when you say eraser, they think you're talking about something different. But this is a suede eraser. It really does feel like a gummy eraser that you used in school to erase pencil, and it has a different makeup. It's actually called Pomaden, Netanoyant Pomaden, but this works really, really well. So if you get stains on your suede, this can make a big difference for you. So that's it. I am done with my shoe care review. I think I've covered everything that's out there, but if you have questions, please feel free to write in, ask me about stuff, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to help. So thank you again.